Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. We got ourselves a little bit of breaking NBA news here, which, of course, has some fallout for the Miami Heat. The Philadelphia 76ers have announced that Joel Embiid is done for the season. They are going to sit him out the rest of the season because of his knee issues. I can't say this is surprising. It is a bit of a bummer for Joel Embiid, as much as I make fun of the 76ers. I do like when the Miami Heat, this is the one thing I would say. I don't like when injuries like that happen because I like when Miami gets the best of Joel Embiid and beats Joel Embiid, quite frankly, even though, there's no love lost between the Heat and the 76ers. And certainly, the Jimmy being gone does take a little bit of the chink out of the armor of the fuel of that rivalry because now he's gone too. But and man, it was always funny whenever that would happen, how sad he would be that Jimmy Butler was no longer with him. But that's just a bummer. I always love seeing any matchups of Bam and Joel Embiid together as well. So it is unfortunate that this goes down the way that it has for the Sixers, especially Paul George quitting podcasting because he realized a little too much talky on that. So it is. It's a bit of a disaster. Now, when I say ramifications for the Miami Heat, this is such an incredible weekend for Miami because they're taking on Indiana, who's fourth, and they're taking on the Knicks, who's third. If Miami is going to do anything for real and get themselves back to 500, you would imagine the start of that goes with basically winning 3 out of 4 at home. And from Miami's perspective, you would like them for that to happen. They got to be one of these two teams that's above them. If they lose both of these games, you're going to feel like the same. You're going to feel like, what is the point of this for the Heat fan? They're going to be like, should they tank? Should they go in the toilet? What do we do here? And so you'll still feel that way, like they could still go get a good win in Cleveland and bounce back in some fashion. But these are the teams that are basically right above you. And if you're not able to take them out, what does that mean for you? Well, now that basically the Sixers have waved the white flag on the season, there was some thought, we could come back. Man, they are now 8 games behind Miami with losing Joel. Maybe having some closure will, put it in some kind of a spot. But as we saw with the Jimmy thing, like sometimes that relief of the pressure and not having that, it can also go the other way and everybody can kind of just let go of the rope for the season. And especially if like Tyrese Maxey got banged up for whatever reason, or what's this to stop Paul George from packing it up as well. That puts Miami in a spot where at 27-30, your only real shot of anybody catching everybody would be Brooklyn, who has been playing decent, but they're not really trying to win. And we just saw with Atlanta, Miami just beat Atlanta. So Miami's probably going to end up in the 8 spot, which means they would only have to win 1 play-in game instead of 2. Like when they were in the 9 spot, and then they're only 2 games up on the 9 spot. Like the idea of Miami losing 2 play-in games is not crazy to end up in the lottery. But if they're going to stick here with fewer and fewer teams being able to catch them, the 76ers were the only other team where you're like, well, if they did get everybody together, they have the talent to probably put some kind of run. But it's been a nightmare scenario season for them. I would say it's just them. And then, man, what's going on with the Suns? I mean, you want to talk about a disaster of disasters. Think about this with the Suns, right? They tried to trade for Jimmy Butler. So, and in a ways, the karma has caught up with them because them and Jimmy, they had some kind of talk in the background. We're going to give you the extension. Bernie Lee's going to make this whole thing on Twitter. Shams, don't use my name. Brr. All they tried to do in the midst of that was bully Bradley Beal so he would waive his no trade clause. Never happened. Then in the midst of that, they benched him. And then they're like, well, I guess the only way we're going to get Jimmy Butler is trading Kevin Durant. Possibilities of Heat getting him aside. He did mention this week on the Draymond Green podcast, I didn't really want to get traded in the middle of the season. Now, was that just to Golden State? We know for sure he didn't want to go traded to Golden State. He says on the record that he didn't want to move in the middle of the season, so maybe that meant Miami too. And then, of course, he's maybe thinking to himself, all right, he mentioned an interesting thing where Miami, well, whatever team's trading for me is going to have to give up a lot. So maybe he knew that they were asking for a lot. Maybe they were asking for Tyler Herro too. I don't know. If they were going to finagle it in a multiplayer trade deal with something like Royce O'Neal, maybe now he's thinking to himself, being in the situation they'll have to give up a lot less, and he'll be in a better situation if he got traded to Miami. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but I found his comments interesting. And then on top of it, this report today from Chris Haynes that Mike Budenholzer basically told Devin Booker he's talking too much in huddles and to be a little less talky. Shh. The coach's voice needs to be heard, not yours. And then Devin Booker's like basically throwing him under the bus with he was basically subtweeting in a press conference, talking about, well, I do like to talk, and I'd rather guys talk and argue or say the wrong thing than say no thing. I like people talking. And you're just like, oh my God. So let me get this straight. This Suns organization has not only bullied Bradley Beal, they offended Kevin Durant, and now they've basically got a rift between the coach, another coach, and their star homegrown guy. Yes, Miami's been through a disaster this year, but that is a huge dumpster fire in the desert. We'll see what ends up being the fallout of that, but they've lost 11 out of 12. Disaster for the Phoenix Suns right now, who are way behind on even just making the play-in right now. You could legitimately say that the Trailblazers, Joe Cronin's Trailblazers, have a better shot of making the play-in than the Phoenix Suns do. And that, my friends, is crazy. As we mentioned, Joe Cronin's Portland Trailblazers only one win behind the Miami Heat, by the by. The Heat do have to take advantage of this opportunity. If they don't, people are going to be pissed. It starts tonight. It starts tonight with this matchup against the Indiana Pacers, as I record this around a little after 4:30 when this Joel Embiid news broke. And then you have, on the idea of it, Tyler Herro and Duncan Robinson today, both just echoing the fact of, like, this is our final push. I think they got 11 of 12 coming up at the Kaseya Center. They get the comforts. It's a hodgepodge of a schedule. There's some good ones, there's some easy ones. Now these Sixer ones supposedly come a little bit easier. But Miami, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, has to take advantage of it. And, then you'll see where the chips fall. But while we were talking about the tank and them looking at Cooper Flag, and if they have a bad weekend, the fans will still be talking about it. But look, if you are Team Tank, this Joel Embiid news very surely puts a lot of that on ice, because, Miami would basically have to, pull a – well, I don't want to use point shaving because that's just a sensitive issue. But they would have to go that route if they were really going to go into the toilet like that, to the standpoint where they're worse than those teams behind them in the East right now. So, this is kind of the time where Miami digs in and they're like, are they going to be able to do it? They could certainly catch Orlando. They're only a couple games back. The Pistons, red hot. It's just, the thing with Miami is it's tough. It's tough to have in your mind the idea of going on a run because they haven't. And the idea that Miami would need to win 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7, even the idea of 4 straight seems like a bit of a long shot because we haven't seen it. And then you add on top of it, like, hey, a lot of guys are banged up. Bam is banged up doing this. And Spo doesn't, and you lost Nico. So there's going to have to be some step up from some guys. You're going to need, maybe something unexpected from somebody else. And it's going to be an interesting weekend for the Heat. Let's just say that. But certainly with Philly going down, any ideas of playing for ping pong balls kind of feels like it just that plan, if anybody was team that, has gone up in smoke. But if Miami doesn't at least split these next two, you're going to have fans who are going to be like, all right, dude, what's the point? So I really feel like this is a weekend. If the Miami Heat are going to show their fan base something, it starts with these next two. I mean, it starts tonight, but it really starts with these next two. You beat the 3 and the 4, at least in the conference. You've gotten drop kicked by the Celtics. You've gotten drubbed by the Cleveland Cavaliers. To really start showing in a post-trade world, an Andrew Wiggins era, a Davion Mitchell showing what he can do, all coming together. This is the weekend that the Heat have to do that. So we will see what happens when tip-off comes around 8 o'clock.